Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I'm Gary Smith, and I've been married to Louise, my soulmate, for 20 years. I work as a shift supervisor in a large automotive parts warehouse, a position I've held for the past 12 years. Before this role, I was employed at a DIY hardware store, where I first met Louise. She was the secretary for the warehouse manager at the time. Standing 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and a solid build, I try to stay in shape even at 45, keeping active both on the job and in my free time. Louise, my beautiful wife, has Mexican roots. Her family immigrated here when she was just 5, and she grew into a captivating woman, 5 inches with striking curves and a youthful presence that often has people guessing she's still in her 30s. Currently, Louise works as the executive assistant to the CEO, Stephen Jr., at an accounting firm. It's a position she's held for 4 years and genuinely loves. We've been to several of Stephen's family gatherings and vacations, as we're quite close to his parents, Stephen Sr. and Denise. But, interestingly, I haven't developed a strong bond with Stephen Jr. Though he sometimes gives Louise a lingering look, he's always kept things respectful. Stephen Jr.'s parents are in their 60s, but you wouldn't know it. Both are fit, active, and widely respected in the community. Stephen Sr. has a solid, disciplined frame that shows his commitment to staying fit, and Denise shares his dedication. When I can't make it to the gym, Louise sometimes goes with Denise, and they make quite a duo. Both Stephen Sr. and Denise are known for their charity work and their dedication to their employees. And though they have some strict standards, they are great friends to Louise and me. Louise has built an impressive career as an executive assistant and has always been paid well for her skills and experience. While my income isn't quite on par with hers, it's never been a problem between us. Louise hits the gym twice a week, maintaining her routine on machines like the cross trainer and rowing machine, and I often join her. The best part? Seeing her look so incredible. Although we don't have kids, our extended family is big and tightly knit, filled with nieces, nephews, and siblings who keep us busy and happy. In our time together, we've shared countless playful and intimate memories throughout our home, from the dining room to the backyard. Whenever we go out, we're a team, inseparable, and friends and family respect our bond. Our relationship is built on a solid foundation of trust and fun. Louise loves dressing in ways that highlight her figure, and she enjoys dancing confidently and tastefully. Occasionally, her friendly demeanor attracts a bit of extra attention, but we've always maintained that our relationship is ours to enjoy, without outside interference. Sometimes people misinterpret Louise's friendliness, and I've had to make it clear that our relationship is exclusive. When we're out with friends at bars or clubs, Louise politely declines offers for drinks or dances from strangers, sticking to just us, family, or close friends. She usually opts for water or Diet Pepsi, which subtly discourages further advances. Early in our relationship, she made it known that she had no interest in dancing with other men, telling me, "Why would I be out with you only to dance with someone else?" That's our style, grounded in loyalty, secure in our relationship, and genuinely happy with each other's company. When we go out, she loves nothing more than to dance with me, and we both genuinely relish our time together. It's not something you hear about every day, right? A married couple that actually looks forward to each other's company? Naturally, we have our share of disagreements, but they're never serious, and often end with us reconnecting in the most intimate ways. Physical closeness is something we both cherish, and we seek it out as much as we can. Some of our moments have even unfolded in rather adventurous places, like a recent night in the Bahamas. There, under the stars, we found ourselves alone in a resort hot tub. It felt private enough, though anyone wandering by could have easily spotted us. Another evening, as twilight settled over a quiet beach, we shared an intimate moment in the sand, with only one other couple nearby, also lost in their own world. We even got ourselves escorted out of a club once for getting a little too wrapped up in each other on the dance floor. My wife often attracts her fair share of attention from locals and tourists alike, but she always turns them down gracefully, especially when they make bold offers to spend time with her or dance. A few persistent locals even went so far as to try and pay for her attention. When her polite refusals didn't do the trick, I'd step in, keeping things respectful, but making it clear. Occasionally, a few didn't back down, and we had to get a bit firmer. There were a few incidents where things escalated, and 5 men found themselves at the infirmary nursing various injuries. My wife, who has a background in kickboxing, once silenced a persistent man with one well-placed kick. This caught the attention of local authorities, who politely suggested we might want to keep a lower profile during our nights out. They seemed used to foreign husbands or boyfriends being okay with their partners spending the night with locals, but we clearly weren't in that category. In fact, the police went as far as to suggest my wife wear something less eye-catching to avoid stirring up interest. It was almost laughable. They seemed to think that her covering up would solve the issue rather than confronting the behavior. So on our final day, she opted for something simple, a tank top and shorts, showing only her arms and legs. Yet, even then, 4 American tourists on a guy's trip decided to press their luck. When she found out these men were married, Louise took particular satisfaction in handling the situation. I'm curious what explanations they might have given their wives about those injuries. This is who we are, Louise and I, adventurous, loyal, and unshakable in our commitment to each other. For years, we've enjoyed playing with different roles together, always just between the two of us. Recently, I was driving home, remembering one of those moments when I noticed my wife's car already parked in the driveway. Beside it sat an unfamiliar luxury car, a Jaguar X-Type, the kind of car a high-level executive might drive. I parked behind her and walked up to the house. Before I reached the door, Louise appeared, still dressed in her work attire, a tailored business suit that flattered her figure, with a jacket draped over a white blouse that hinted at her shape underneath. With a smile, she said, "There's someone here to see you. He's got a proposal for us." She gestured toward the Jaguar, where I saw a vanity plate reading Stephen Jr. I immediately recognized who it was and guessed what the offer might entail. Though I work as a supervisor, I'm the hands-on type. I keep it practical with jeans, a t-shirt, my reliable leather jacket, and steel-toed boots, ready for whatever comes next. I trailed behind my wife as we entered our home, making our way directly to the kitchen. There, sitting at the table, was Stephen Jr., her boss's son. He was dressed to impress, sporting an expensive suit, designer shoes, a stylish haircut, and a flashy gold watch, exuding an air of wealth and privilege. On the table in front of him lay an open checkbook and a gold-plated pen, as though he were preparing to strike a lucrative deal. "Good to see you, Gary," he greeted me, his tone dripping with smugness, nearly a sneer. "Let's keep this friendly, all right? Your wife is about to make you a very wealthy man." His words carried an unmistakable entitlement. My wife gave a faint smile, then shrugged and said, "Gary, this guy here wants to rent me for the weekend." It turned out he'd been infatuated with her ever since he'd seen her in a black bikini at his father's house last summer. I turned to him, keeping my expression neutral. "So, that bikini really made an impression on you, huh?" His grin widened, unapologetic. "Gary, Louise would look stunning in anything, even a black garbage bag, she'd still turn heads. Yes, your wife is beautiful, sexy, and I'm willing to compensate you for not having her around." His self-satisfaction was unmistakable, as if he thought his proposition was ingenious. "So, does your family know you're using their money to rent time with my wife?" I asked, watching his reaction. For a brief moment, his confidence faltered. "No, and they won't. If either of you spills this, Louise loses her job, and I'll make sure your warehouse manager finds a reason to fire you too." He grinned, clearly confident he held all the power. Louise gave me a sly smile and discreetly flashed her phone at me, revealing a message she had sent to her boss, along with a recording of our conversation. She whispered that Stephen's father and 2 security guards would arrive in about 20 minutes. Stephen Jr.'s smugness visibly faded. "Just out of curiosity," I asked, "how much were you planning to offer for my wife's time?" "Hey, Gary, don't I get a say in this?" Louise broke in, feigning indignation. "Of course, darling," I replied, pulling her close with a grin. She leaned into me, then turned her gaze on Stephen. "So, let's hear it, genius. What's your offer? she asked. Stephen seemed momentarily thrown off, but eventually mumbled, I was thinking, $5,000? His confidence wavered as he gauged our reactions. Louise scoffed, and I couldn't help but chuckle. Stephen, that's barely worth my wife's time. Try harder. Looking embarrassed but determined, he quickly countered, All right, $20,000, and she stays until Monday night. He gave a smug smile as if he'd just made a fair offer. $20,000 to wreck my marriage? Louise replied, feigning a serious tone. Stephen, you'll need to value me a little higher. Stephen stammered and after a pause said, All right, $50,000, and trust me, after one weekend, you'll be begging to come back. His confidence seemed restored as he leaned back, satisfied. I checked my watch. 10 minutes had gone by. Louise leaned in to kiss me lightly and whispered that she was still recording everything. So, Stephen, I asked in a cold tone, what exactly do you expect my wife to do with you? He hesitated, then, with forced nonchalance, replied, Well, obviously there'd be intimacy, right? He tried to make it sound casual, as if this were a perfectly rational business deal. Louise burst out laughing. You're truly delusional, Stephen. Trust me, my husband is all I'll ever need. She stepped away from me, closing the gap between herself and Stephen. I stood back, knowing she could handle him. Louise was strong, and despite her small frame, she had a presence that few would dare to challenge. Still, with Stephen towering over her at well over 6 feet, I stayed close, just in case. Let's get one thing straight, Stephen. I am not, and will never be for sale. Nor will Gary take a single penny from you. Her tone was sharp as ice. So why don't you tuck that checkbook away? Your father will be here in 3 minutes. I'm a highly competent PA, and I've dealt with spoiled brats like you before. Stephen's face drained of color as the gravity of the situation hit him. His control, once seemingly unshakable, had unraveled entirely. Your father depends on me in ways he'll never rely on you. Stephen Jr. had the nerve to approach my wife, but he underestimated her quick reflexes. Louise reacted without hesitation, slapping him so hard that he toppled from his chair, left sprawling on the floor, clutching his face in utter shock. As he struggled to regain his footing, his father entered the room flanked by 2 security guards. He took in the scene, Louise standing above his son, then turned to me with a somber expression. Gary, he said, his voice heavy, I'm truly sorry for my son's behavior. Rest assured, after this, he will have no place in my company. His gaze shifted to the recording we had captured of Stephen Jr. attempting to bribe me for time alone with my wife. This is something I never thought I'd witness. He signaled to the guards, who moved in alongside an assistant to escort Stephen Jr. out. Red-faced from Louise's slap and burning with embarrassment, Stephen Jr. threw an angry glare at Louise. In a flash of defiance, he shook off the guards and lunged at her. Instinctively, Louise stepped back, but before he could reach her, I stepped in and landed a punch squarely on his nose, sending him crashing onto the kitchen table. Applause erupted from Louise and the guards, while Stephen Sr. grinned broadly. Gary, he said, I've waited a long time for someone to show him his place. Louise, if you ever consider a career change, there's a position for you in my company. I'll make sure it's worth your while and give you full training on the ropes. He shook her hand with enthusiasm, and as the guards led Stephen Jr. out to the waiting car, he called out, And Louise, feel free to take the Jaguar if you'd like. Once Stephen Jr. was gone, Louise gave me a warm smile, and soon after, we found comfort in each other. I lifted her in my arms, carried her upstairs, and we spent the night together, wrapped in a slow, tender embrace that lasted until we drifted into peaceful sleep. For months, Stephen Jr. had been pestering my wife, and she had documented every unwelcome advance, keeping both his father and me informed. She kept track of each time he tried to pressure her into betraying me, always making sure she was alone with him only when absolutely unavoidable. Eventually, Stephen Jr. even proposed an outrageous offer, money in exchange for time alone with her. Naturally, she relayed the entire scheme to me, and both of his parents were informed. We put a plan in motion, and I returned home early that day as arranged. Today, Louise holds a respected managerial position, working directly under Stephen Sr. She oversees her own department and has a promotion to director on the horizon. As for Stephen Jr., he was reassigned to a remote post office in the far reaches of Alaska, where he works as a mail carrier for a logging company. Disinherited, his trust fund assets now diverted to charity, he lives with little more than his clothes, a rundown Jeep, and a small cabin. Occasionally, his parents check in on him through contacts in the logging company, but mostly he's left to fend for himself. His nose still shows signs of the break, and he walks with a slight limp. Once, when Louise and I were vacationing in Alaska, we saw him at a bar, where he drunkenly attempted to start a fight with a wiry local he hadn't noticed. Later, he told co-workers he'd been jumped by 5 men, though no one quite bought his story. In town, Stephen is a pariah. Married women avoid him, single women steer clear, and his only regular company is the handful of local sex workers who appear on payday. Around 6 months later, as Louise and I sat on the couch watching TV, she teased, "So, what would it take for you to let me be with someone else?" Laughing, I replied, "There isn't enough money in any bank for that." She kissed me softly, murmuring, "Good. Same goes for you." We pulled each other close, finding comfort in the warmth of our shared laughter and embrace. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I rarely eavesdrop on other people's conversations, and even now I can't quite pinpoint what led me to do so on that particular Sunday. I was in the basement, tinkering with the water heater, when the phone rang. The handset was nearby, so I grabbed it without thinking much of it. I had no idea where my wife, Aurora, was at that moment. Just as I lifted the receiver, her voice filtered down from upstairs. "Michael, you shouldn't have called here. What if Frank had picked up?" she said, her tone sharp and agitated. "Relax," a man's voice replied, calm and unconcerned. "I'd just say it was something work-related. Stop overthinking. I only wanted to confirm tomorrow's plan." He spoke with an unsettling ease, as if their conversation was perfectly ordinary. "All right," Aurora said, her voice softening slightly. "We'll meet at the Desk Motel, room 117 at 1 p.m. sharp. I'll bring the wine and strawberries, just like we talked about. And don't forget that black silk lingerie you mentioned." "Got it," Michael responded. "Just be sure no one sees us together when we come or go." Aurora hesitated. "I'm nervous, that's all. Are you having second thoughts?" "No, not really. It's just... This is new for me. Of course I'm anxious," she admitted. "But I've made up my mind. It'll be fine." "Okay, but if Frank ever finds out," Michael began, only for Aurora to cut him off. "I know. If he suspects anything, I'll end it immediately. I can't risk it. I have to go now before he hears something. Tomorrow, 1 p.m. The line went dead. Slowly, I replaced the receiver, my hand trembling. For the next 10 minutes, I sat in stunned silence, replaying the conversation in my mind. Why had I answered that call? Why at that exact moment? Aurora and I had been inseparable since our childhood. We'd gotten married a year after high school and built a life together. She was the only woman I had ever loved, and I had always believed I was the only man she had ever been with. Aurora's beauty hadn't faded. Her figure remained as striking as the day we met. Together, we had raised our son, Terry, who was now navigating high school. Our world was small, our lives closely connected. I thought our marriage was unshakable. Clearly, I had been wrong. I abandoned the water heater, grabbed a beer from the basement fridge, and sat down, hoping to dull the emotional blow. I needed to think. 3 options came to mind. First, I could confront her directly, though I feared it would lead to an emotional explosion. That seemed too chaotic. Second, I could drop subtle hints, letting her stew in the discomfort of suspicion. But that felt cowardly and dragged out. The third choice, though risky, felt calculated. I'd let her go through with it. Up to a point. Then, at the last possible moment, I'd intervene, giving her a chance to back out. What she chose in that moment would determine the future of our marriage. I tried to anticipate her actions. Ideally, she'd have a change of heart and walk away. But that felt unlikely. More plausibly, she might take the chance to end things if I confronted her. The worst and most probable scenario, however, was that she would go through with the affair regardless of my intervention. I didn't want to accept it, but I had to prepare for that possibility. After weighing my options, I turned my focus to planning. The situation felt almost like a strategic game, and to my surprise, I found a strange sense of energy in preparing to outmaneuver her and Michael. That evening, after dinner, I began to set my plan into motion. First, I needed to gather information. I'd spent decades working in security systems, having built a career at a firm that had recently offered me a transfer to Huntsville, Alabama. Aurora had resisted the move, but now it felt like the fresh start we might need. It would also benefit Terry. Attending Auburn University as an in-state student could save us a significant amount of money. Aurora, meanwhile, had been with her insurance company for a decade. Her career seemed to be thriving, though I'd always disliked her co-worker, Michael Taylor. Something about him had never sat right with me, and now my suspicions were validated. Despite being married to a seemingly kind woman, Michael had crossed a line that enraged me. This wasn't just about Aurora's betrayal. It was about taking control of my life and my family's future. As the pieces of the plan fell into place, I braced myself for the confrontation ahead, determined to see it through, no matter the outcome. During dinner, I resolved to take the job in Huntsville. No matter what might occur the following day, I was set on making the move. Once there, I could establish residency, giving Terry ample time to qualify for in-state tuition. I saw no reason to share this decision with Aurora just yet, but I intended to inform Terry after we finished eating. The next morning, I'd inform my employer, and once everything was ready, leave for Alabama. Once my decision was solidified, the rest of the plan came together. Terry and I had a strong bond, and when I told him about my intention to go to Alabama ahead of the family, he agreed it was a sound idea. He promised not to tell his mother. I chose not to share her plans for the following day. While I wasn't entirely sure of my next steps, I felt confident I could handle whatever came my way. I told Aurora I needed to run an errand at Home Depot and left the house. My first stop was to buy a prepaid cell phone with 60 minutes of talk time. I had several calls to make and wanted to ensure they couldn't be traced. Afterward, I went to a bar I used to frequent, hoping to reconnect with old acquaintances who lived on the fringes of the law. With $400, I purchased 2 large bags of low-grade marijuana. An old friend named Benny cautioned me that carrying such a quantity was risky. It could result in a charge for intent to distribute. I told him that was precisely my plan. Among the bar's patrons was Wolf Fraser, a notorious figure known for his temper and shady dealings. He drove a Corvette, and when I left, I saw it parked outside. Using a screwdriver, I removed Wolf's license plate in under a minute. Knowing his workplace, I planned to call him there the next morning. My next stop was the Desk Motel, where I grabbed a selection of brochures about local attractions and eateries, along with some items I specifically needed. The front desk clerk also handed me a map and contact numbers for room service and housekeeping. By the time I returned home, Aurora was watching TV. I casually mentioned that I had a few things to finish up at work. She told me she'd shower and go to bed early, given her busy plans for the next day. While she was in the bathroom, I rifled through her briefcase, jotting down contacts from her planner and address book. The next step was painstaking. I entered each number into the prepaid phone and my personal one, then consulted the phone book to find a few additional contacts. When I finally completed the list, I was utterly drained and collapsed on the couch. Sleep was elusive, as my mind churned over Aurora's plans and my own missteps that might have led us here. Guilt gnawed at me, and I wrestled with the thought that this was somehow my fault. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me. Morning dawned, bringing with it a mix of apprehension and resolve. I brewed coffee and set the table for breakfast. When Aurora came downstairs, she looked stunning. "You look fantastic today," I said, trying to sound casual. "Something big happening at work?" "What are you talking about? I always look great," she replied with a playful grin. We flipped through the newspaper while we ate, though our conversation was strained, polite but lacking warmth. I couldn't tell if she was nervous or excited. "I've got a packed schedule today," I told her. I might not make it home for dinner. That's fine, she said lightly. I'll make something that'll keep. Anything specific you'd like? No, just the usual, I replied. The exchange felt hollow, both of us tiptoeing around the unspoken reality. She had her plans, and I had mine. Neither of us wanted to ignite a confrontation. At work, I arrived early to finalize the paperwork for my transfer to Huntsville. After clearing my desk and signing off on all necessary documents, I visited a divorce attorney. I gathered the forms and information I'd need to file for divorce if my last attempt to salvage the situation failed. Returning home, I packed my clothes and loaded the car. I removed the computer's hard drive, secured vital documents, and collected our savings, much of which was now in the form of valuable coins I had safely stowed. That morning, as soon as the banks opened, I sprang into action. I emptied all our accounts and canceled every credit card. Though I knew my steps were both abrupt and extreme, I couldn't shake the certainty that she wouldn't change. On my way out, I stopped at a flower shop and arranged for a dozen red roses to be delivered at exactly 1:15 p.m. Timing, I believed, was key to everything. By 12:30, I pulled into the motel parking lot, selecting a spot that offered both privacy and a clear view of the room. I made sure everything I'd need was laid out neatly on the passenger seat. Not long after, Michael arrived. He stepped out of his car carrying a grocery bag, likely stocked with strawberries, wine, and other essentials. After entering the room, he briefly reappeared to grab some ice. While he busied himself inside, I set my plan into motion. My first call was to Pizza Hut. Hi, I'd like to order a large pepperoni pizza for delivery to room 117 at the Desk Motel. If I don't answer, I might be in the shower, so please knock loudly. 20 minutes is perfect. After hanging up, I called Domino's, Papa Frank's, Godfather's Pizza, and then the Golden Dragon for egg rolls and sweet and sour pork. I didn't care if some called back to confirm. The chaos would unfold just the same. Since Aurora hadn't yet arrived, I dialed housekeeping next, requesting extra towels and an additional ice bucket, ensuring delivery in about 15 minutes. At last, Aurora appeared, parking her car at the far edge of the lot to stay out of sight. With a small overnight bag in hand, she walked toward the room. When she was about 20 feet from the door, I dialed her number. Hi, honey, it's me, I said casually. Frank, is everything okay? You don't usually call me at work during the day, she replied, sounding concerned. I just wanted to tell you I love you, I said with warmth. Oh, Frank, that's so sweet. I love you too, she answered, her voice softening. Well, I'll let you get back to work. See you later, I said before hanging up. Goodbye, Frank, and thanks for the call, she responded cheerfully before ending the call. Moments later, she stepped into the motel room, sealing her choice. A surge of emotion gripped me, but I pushed it aside, determined to finish what I'd started. I picked up my phone and continued making calls. My 7th call was to the local news station. Hello, this is WWS-TV, right? Something strange is happening at the Desk Motel. You might want to send a crew over. I think the police are already on their way, I said vaguely before hanging up. Next, I focused on Michael's car. Luck was on my side. He had parked in a spot that allowed me to swap his license plate unnoticed. I replaced it with one I'd taken from Wolf's Corvette, tucking Michael's original plate beneath his car. After that, I called Aurora at work. Hi, this is Rob Kelly. I was supposed to have a meeting with Aurora Martin at 3 p.m., but I'll have to reschedule it. Could you ask her to call me back? I've been trying to reach her, but her line seems busy. Thanks. The number I gave wasn't mine, but a direct line to a law firm specializing in divorce. With the plates swapped, I moved Aurora's car to the back of the motel lot, where it was less conspicuous. On my way back to my own vehicle, I made another call. Hi, Mrs. Taylor. Your husband asked me to let you know he's having car trouble and needs you to pick him up at the Desk Motel, room 117. You can call his cell or reach him directly at the room. Oh, and I think he's meeting with a client. A very attractive one, by the way. Bye. Then, I left a message for Wolf's boss at Acme Welding, informing him that Wolf's license plate had been spotted on a white Honda at the Desk Motel. For my final call, I contacted the police, reporting that kids were swapping license plates in the motel parking lot. I added that something about the situation seemed off and asked them to investigate. With everything in place, the stage was set. I handed over the details of Wolf's car. Not long after, the first pizza delivery arrived at the motel room. Though there seemed to be some kind of brief dispute, Michael eventually paid, and the delivery person departed. My 12th phone call was to Aurora's mother. "Hello, this is Frank," I began quickly. "I don't have much time to explain. Aurora is currently at a motel with a man from her workplace. Please, can you call her and convince her to stop whatever she's doing? I can't go into detail right now. You have her cell phone number, right? If you can't reach her from there, try calling the motel. I'm sorry to involve you in this, but I really need you to do this immediately. Thanks, and goodbye." Soon after, 2 more pizza deliveries arrived, and a housekeeper came by with extra towels. A tense argument broke out at the door between everyone involved, but it eventually settled, and they all left one after the other. I then called the motel's front desk. "This is Mr. Taylor in room 117, I reported. "There's a leak under the bathroom sink. It's dripping from the base of the faucet, and the water's starting to spread onto the carpet. Could you send someone from maintenance to take care of it right away? Thank you." A few moments later, the rumble of a Harley-Davidson echoed through the parking lot. The bike slowed as it approached the line of parked cars, eventually pulling in behind Michael's vehicle. Before the rider, Wolf, could make a move, a police car rolled in. What followed was an explosive argument between the biker and the officer. Meanwhile, I made another phone call. "Mr. Granger, this is Frank Martin," I said, keeping my voice measured. "You employ my wife, Aurora, correct?" "Yes, I know she's a valued employee. However, at this moment, she's in room 117 at the Desk Motel with one of her co-workers, Michael Taylor. They're having an affair. I'm certain of it. I believe your company has strict policies against such conduct, does it not? I recommend calling them on their cell phones for confirmation. If they don't answer, you can call the motel directly. I don't want Aurora working for your company anymore, Mr. Granger. I also expect Michael to face consequences according to your policies. I'm sorry to bring this to your attention, but I felt it was necessary. Thank you for your time. Goodbye." As I ended the call, another delivery arrived, this time food from a Chinese restaurant. The scene outside the motel was escalating. The officer began walking toward the room while Wolf, waving his arms furiously, shouted at him. I made one last call, this time to Aurora's sister, Nancy. "Hey, Nancy, it's Frank. How are you doing?" I started, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. "I have a situation here. Aurora is at a motel with someone she works with, and I'm heading home to grab my Ruger. My plan is to return and kill them both, but I'd prefer the police or the media not find Aurora in an undressed state. Could you call her and tell her to get dressed before I arrive?" "She's at the Desk Motel, room 117. If you can't get through to her on her cell, call the room directly. I also moved her car to the back of the lot, so she may not be able to leave right away. Honestly, it might be best if you went over there yourself and took her home. If you manage to get there before me, please handle things as best you can. I need to go now. Let me know what happens later. Thanks, Nancy." Outside, the chaos near room 117 was spiraling out of control. The maintenance worker had shown up to address the plumbing issue. Another delivery person, demanding payment, had joined the fray, while Wolf continued arguing loudly with the police officer. Michael was at the center of it all, and now a florist, holding a bouquet of roses, was trying unsuccessfully to deliver them. At that moment, I knew my part in this was over. Everything I had set out to do was complete. It was time for me to leave. As I departed, I walked past a group of reporters lingering nearby. In my car, 2 bags of marijuana lay openly on the seat, leaving me unsure of how to get rid of them. My original plan was to hide them in Michael's vehicle, but I quickly thought better of it. On the drive home, I decided to throw both the cell phone and the marijuana into the river. I made a quick stop at the house, just long enough to say goodbye to Terry. I promised him I'd keep in touch, and assured him I wouldn't cause any problems for his mother in the coming days. Deep down, I was desperate to piece together what had unfolded in that motel room over the last hour. As I left the town behind, I chose to make one final call. I didn't know if the call would go through, but I tried anyway. "Hello, Michael Taylor," I began. "This is Frank Martin. Let me make something perfectly clear. If you ever lay a hand on my wife, I'll make sure you regret it in ways you can't imagine. Do you understand me?" A faint voice on the other end replied, "Yes, I understand." Without another word, I ended the call and merged onto the highway. Around 8 hours later, my phone rang. Aurora's name lit up the screen. "Frank, where are you?" she asked. "I'm on I-81 near Knoxville. Why?" "Frank, something's wrong. We need to talk." "There's nothing left to discuss," I replied, my tone icy. "Please, Frank, just listen to me." "Fine," I said. "Answer 3 questions honestly. Then we'll see. Agreed?" "Okay," she replied hesitantly. "What did I say when I called you earlier today?" "You said, 'I love you,'" she answered. "And what did you do after hanging up?" I pressed. After a brief pause, she admitted, "I went into the motel room." "Why did you go into the motel room?" I asked, pushing further. Silence. "Aurora, answer me. Why did you go into the motel room?" I repeated. Another long silence followed before she softly said, "Frank, I don't want to say." "Goodbye, Aurora," I said, ending the call and shutting off my phone. I wouldn't be needing it for the rest of my journey. With my moving expenses covered by the company, I allowed myself a bit of comfort, a decent motel and a satisfying dinner. Over the next 2 days, I focused entirely on settling into my new surroundings. Finding an apartment was straightforward, and soon I had a place that was affordable and suited my needs. I took care of all the essentials, setting up phone service, securing a mailing address, and updating my car registration and title. I also obtained a new driver's license, registered to vote, and filed the necessary paperwork to establish my residency. Once everything was in order, I began the divorce process. It went smoothly, and soon I was ready to move forward with my new job. I reached out to Terry to share my new phone number, requesting that he keep it from his mother. Still, I told him I'd understand if she managed to pry it out of him. He assured me it wouldn't happen. During our conversation, he mentioned that Aurora had lost her job and wasn't doing well emotionally. I offered to help if they needed anything, but he insisted they were managing. Terry became my sole connection to my old life. A few weeks later, he told me Aurora had received the divorce papers and signed them immediately, returning them the same day. He doubted she even bothered to read them. Her behavior began to shift noticeably. She stopped wearing makeup and started selling off her possessions. Every couple of weeks, she held yard sales to get rid of whatever she could. I granted my lawyer full authority to handle the sale of the house, making it clear I didn't want anything from the proceeds. Aurora eventually found work at a nearby bakery. Just before Terry's high school graduation, Aurora listed the house for sale, pricing it so low it sold almost immediately. As part of the agreement, she and Terry were allowed to stay in the house until he finished school, a condition the buyers readily accepted. After graduation, Aurora moved into a small apartment within walking distance of her job. It was a humble apartment on the 2nd floor, furnished with only the bare necessities. She had given away most of her possessions, even letting Terry take the car for his journey to college. Before heading off to Auburn, he stayed long enough to help her settle into the new place. By the time she moved in, every trace of their former home was gone. Terry noted how her new living space felt as sparse and austere as a monk's quarters. While she had always made sure Terry had everything he needed, she seemed to sacrifice her own comforts without hesitation. It was clear he worried about her. The next 4 years flew by. Auburn was 4 hours away, and I rarely saw Terry. His life was consumed by school and new friendships, while I buried myself in work to fill the time. After selling the house, Aurora arranged for the management company to send me her share of the proceeds. She kept none of it for herself. I placed the money in a separate account marked for her. With my portion, I bought a modest home and threw myself into its renovation. I didn't date or socialize. The thought of forming new relationships simply didn't appeal to me. When Terry's graduation day finally arrived, I traveled to celebrate his achievement. Aurora and I sat side by side during the ceremony. Despite the distance and history between us, I was glad to see her. She looked well, though slightly worn. Without makeup or much attention to herself, a quiet sadness lingered around her. We exchanged polite smiles and a quick hello, but the ceremony started before we could engage in real conversation. It wasn't clear what we'd even say to one another. The ceremony concluded faster than I anticipated, and the tension eased when Terry approached us, radiating excitement. He spoke endlessly about his accomplishment, his enthusiasm contagious. Some of his friends came by to introduce themselves, and before long, Terry left with them to celebrate at Gulf Shores. That left Aurora and me alone. "How did you get here?" I asked, trying to fill the silence. "I took the bus," she said. "It's a round-trip ticket, and I need to catch the return by 6. Could you give me a ride?" "Of course," I replied. "When do you want to leave?" "I took the week off work, but I'm not staying here. I'll probably head back tonight and spend the rest of the week painting my apartment." "That sounds peaceful," I offered. "What else can I do?" She chuckled lightly. "You could stay with me for a few days," I suggested. "I'll even drive you back home afterward. It's better than the bus." "Anything's better than the bus," she admitted, "but staying with you might not be the best idea. It'd be too difficult for both of us. We've never talked about what happened. I was angry and shut you out. I didn't let you explain, and I've carried that with me these past few years." "Do you want to talk about it now?" I asked, to try to make sense of things. "Or do you think it's too late?" "Maybe it is too late," she said quietly. "What could you possibly say to undo the damage? You didn't explain back then. Why should I trust you to explain now?" "I don't have an easy answer for that," I admitted. "But even if we don't resolve everything, I'd still enjoy your company for a few days. Can't you spare that much?" "I'm not sure," she replied hesitantly. "I didn't plan for an overnight stay. I only have what I'm wearing." "We can stop by Walmart," I suggested. "I'll get you a few things. It's a 4-hour drive, and honestly, I'd appreciate the company." "This feels like a waste of time," she said after a pause. "But I'll give it a shot. If you say the wrong thing, though, I won't hesitate to leave." "That's fair," I agreed, as we began the journey, uncertain of what the next few days would bring. As we walked toward my car parked a short distance away, a heavy silence accompanied us. Once inside, the first stretch of the drive passed without a word, each of us wrapped in our own thoughts. Eventually, we reached the outskirts of Birmingham, where I stopped to grab a few essentials for her, some underwear, pants, and a handful of tops. I suggested she might want a pair of sneakers, and after some hesitation, she agreed. Makeup, however, was a firm no, and I didn't push the matter, only gently encouraged her. Later, we pulled into a Cracker Barrel for dinner, one of her long-standing favorite spots. The drive along I-65 was uneventful, the smooth journey allowing us to make good progress. Out of the blue, she broke the silence, her words halting me in my tracks. She wanted to discuss sex. I glanced at her, unsure how to respond. "What exactly do you mean by sex?" I asked cautiously, my voice measured. She faltered for a moment before opening up. "The last time you asked me, I couldn't answer. I wanted to, but the words wouldn't come. Maybe I was ashamed, or maybe I didn't want to hurt you. I don't know, but I just couldn't say it." She let out a deep sigh before continuing. "After you hung up that day, I realized you must have figured it out. Denying it any longer felt pointless. I tried calling you back, but your phone was off. That's when it hit me. Everything had changed. I'd shattered your trust, and I had no clue how to fix it. I spent so many nights trying to find a way, but nothing seemed to make sense." She explained how years passed, and with time, she came to accept that some things couldn't be mended. "You seem to handle it better than I ever did," she admitted softly. "But if you knew all along, why didn't you try to stop me?" "I couldn't," I said, my voice calm yet firm. "It wasn't my role to stop you. If I had, it would have been for the wrong reasons, because you were scared of being caught, not because you recognized it was wrong. You had to make that choice yourself." She nodded faintly. "I understand, but I still wish you'd said something." "I did," I reminded her. "That last phone call, when I told you I loved you, that was me giving you a chance. I hoped you'd take it." She went quiet, reflecting. "It was a test, wasn't it? And I failed." "I won't argue with that," I replied evenly. Her voice dropped to a near whisper. Did you love him? Michael, I mean. Absolutely not, she said emphatically. Michael adored his wife as much as I loved you. We were just friends. It wasn't about love or even attraction. It was different. Then why? I pressed, my voice tinged with frustration. Why did it happen? She sighed, her gaze distant. Michael and I worked together for nearly a year. Over time, we talked about everything, really. One topic was sex. We realized we'd both only ever been with our spouses. Neither of us was unhappy. In fact, we were content. But that shared curiosity grew. Her voice turned introspective. The more we discussed it, the less strange the idea seemed. Eventually, it felt almost casual, like a theoretical what if. There was no romance, no passion. It felt clinical, like an experiment between two consenting adults. We agreed it would happen once, no strings attached, just a private moment shared between friends. And the risks? I asked, incredulous. Did you ever consider what could go wrong? We didn't, she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. It seemed harmless at the time, like going to a movie together. I genuinely believed you'd never find out, and no one would get hurt. I was so naive. I'm sorry, truly sorry. And Michael's wife? I pressed, my tone sharper than intended. She was already preparing to divorce him, she said, sounding utterly drained. I laid everything bare before her, just as I'm recounting it to you now. In the end, she chose not to proceed with the divorce, though I suspect their marriage never truly recovered. Michael lost his position at the company, just as I did, but unlike me, he wasn't prepared to take it lying down. He pursued arbitration, arguing that no explicit company policies had been violated since nothing physical had occurred between us. The board didn't agree. Shortly after, he and his wife relocated to Baltimore. I haven't seen or heard from them since. When we finally arrived at the house, a wave of relief washed over me. The drive had been steeped in a silence that felt heavier with each passing moment. There was so much to process, and I was still grappling with the weight of it all. I guided Aurora to my bedroom and decided to stay in the guest room myself. Once I made sure she had everything she needed, I wished her a good night. Tomorrow promised more conversations, hopefully ones that carried less tension. When I came downstairs the next morning, I was surprised to find her already in the kitchen, a rare sight, as it had been years since anyone but me had prepared breakfast. Well, why don't you enlighten me about the Michael situation, you idiot, she said, cutting straight to the point. You already know there was nothing between us, and you know why, I replied, trying to stay calm. But sure, let's revisit that nightmare chapter of my life. I assume I ruined your perfect evening. Oh, I know what happened, Frank, she shot back. Yes, there were strawberries and wine, but don't act like it was anything more romantic than that. Don't exaggerate it. Did anything significant even happen? She pressed. Oh, plenty, I replied with biting sarcasm. The evening was spent fending off relentless phone calls and a parade of people banging on the door. Someone thought it'd be hilarious to ensure we had zero privacy. The most intimate moment I had was taking off my shoes. So it was a disaster? She asked. Disaster doesn't begin to cover it, I said, my voice heavy with bitterness. It was the worst half hour of my life. While Michael was dealing with some angry biker trying to bust down the door, I slipped out, only to find my car missing. I completely broke down. That's when Nancy showed up. You called my sister. Worse, you called my mom. She still hasn't forgiven me for that, Aurora said, her voice trembling with hurt. I know I made a mess of things, I admitted. I'm sorry for ruining something so important to you. I take full responsibility for my actions. It was an awful thing to do. Stop it, Frank, she interjected. The blame isn't yours. If you think you can just show up after 5 years and take responsibility for everything that went wrong, you're deluded. It was my fault. Completely mine. I've been carrying that guilt ever since, and you don't get to take it from me. I just feel like I should share some of the blame, I said quietly. Don't, she snapped. When I walked into that motel room, I lost every shred of self-respect I had. That's something I can never reclaim. For what it's worth, my interruption saved your dignity, I said softly. I'm sorry I couldn't step in sooner. I understand now why I couldn't. It's devastating, Aurora. I've always loved you, and I still do. I never wanted to hurt you, Frank, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. I can't even ask for your forgiveness because I don't think I deserve it. Losing your love and trust has been the worst pain of my life. You never lost my love, I replied gently. That means a lot to me, she said, her eyes softening. But what about us? Our marriage? I'm sorry, I admitted. That's something I don't know how to fix. That's fair, she said, nodding solemnly. So what's for lunch? How about sushi? I offered. Sounds good. Does this outfit look okay? She asked, a hint of lightness returning to her voice. The day turned out to be unexpectedly pleasant. After lunch, we went shopping to update Aurora's wardrobe with a more modern touch. I even convinced her to try a little lip gloss. Nothing too bold, just a subtle enhancement. Dinner was simple: soup, cheese, and crackers. We ended the evening with a glass of fine wine, savoring a rare moment of peace. Aurora had finally begun to resemble her old self again, and seeing her that way brought a sense of relief. The more we talked, the more relaxed she became. At one point, she turned to me and asked directly, Frank, are we going to sleep together tonight? I paused before answering. I'm not sure. There's a lot on my mind right now. She tilted her head, intrigued but firm. Like what? I hesitated but decided to be honest. I keep worrying that if we do, I won't be able to stop thinking about you and Michael. It's been weighing on me because I don't know how to handle it. She rolled her eyes in exasperation. That's ridiculous. Why would you even think about that? Let me explain, I said carefully. Do you remember years ago when we first started dating, maybe 30 years back? You told me something that stuck with me ever since. You said that whenever you, handled things on your own, you used to imagine Pam Kramer, the cheerleader. Her eyebrows shot up in surprise. I said that? Yes, you did, I said, nodding. And for the next several years, every time we were together, I couldn't help but wonder if you were secretly picturing her instead of me. You can't be serious, she said, incredulous. I am, I insisted. And now, it feels like the tables have turned. Only this time, it's you who might be grappling with it. I had to move past it back then, so why can't you do the same now? She folded her arms and stared at me. All right, fine. But tell me this. Who do you think about when you're, That's private, I replied defensively. Oh, come on, she said, rolling her eyes again. Everybody has fantasies. Just spill it. Who's your go-to? I sighed, realizing there was no way out of this. Most of the time, it's you. Her eyes narrowed. Most of the time. Who else, Frank? Who's in your head the rest of the time? Do you really want me to answer that? I asked cautiously. Yes, I do, she said, her tone daring me. But you'd better not laugh. All right, I said with some hesitation. It's Pierce Brosnan. She blinked at me, stunned. You're joking. Not at all, I said with a shrug. I've always thought he was ridiculously handsome. There's no harm in that, right? By the way, since we're on the topic, who's been on your mind these past few years when you've been, relieving stress? Mostly you, she admitted softly. I think about you a lot. But now I need to know, who else do you think about? I hesitated, feeling the weight of the question. Well, sometimes I think about you and Michael. Her jaw dropped. You fantasize about me and Michael? That's so twisted. It's not what you think, I explained quickly. After your date with him, I couldn't stop wondering what drew you to him. I became obsessed with the idea that maybe he was better than me in bed. Over time, that thought spiraled into imagining him giving you incredible pleasure, orgasm after orgasm. Oddly, it wasn't about him. It was about seeing you happy and fulfilled. Eventually, I blocked him out of the picture and focused on you enjoying yourself. It's complicated, but it's the truth. She shook her head with a small laugh. Well, I guess we're even now. She stood and stretched before announcing her plan. Here's how we're going to deal with this. I'm going to take a shower. When I'm done, we'll make love. You can think about Pam Kramer, and I'll think about Pierce Brosnan. Problem solved. Then tomorrow we'll pack up my stuff and I'll move in with you. Deal? I raised an eyebrow at her. Does this mean we're getting married? Not yet, she said firmly. I can't marry someone who doesn't fully trust me. Maybe in a couple of years we'll revisit that idea. I sighed, feeling a mix of hope and frustration. So you're staying single just in case another Michael comes along? Her glare was icy. One more comment like that and I'll smack you. Now go turn off the phones. I don't want any interruptions tonight. The next morning, we packed her belongings quickly. As Terry had pointed out, Aurora had significantly downsized. She'd even sold her remaining furniture to the landlord for $200. Once her things were loaded in the car, she made a quick stop at the bakery to bid farewell to her co-workers. As we hit the highway and headed south, I glanced over at her. She caught my eye, and we both smiled. Then, out of nowhere, a question surfaced in my mind. Just one last thing, I said. Go ahead, she replied. Where on earth did you get that Pierce Brosnan poster? This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.